Saving America one entrepreneur at a time, it's the Biz Wrap Podcast with your host, Michael Manahan. The show that celebrates small business and entrepreneurs, it's Biz Wrap Radio with your host, small businessman, educator, and author, Michael Manahan. And welcome to another edition of Biz Wrap Radio with your host, Michael Manahan. And thank you so much for joining me today. Biz Wrap Radio, the show all about small business and entrepreneurs. We're here to help you as a small business person make more money or perhaps raise money for your business, perhaps come up with some strategies and ideas to increase sales, increase revenue, take better care of your customers, maybe pay less taxes. It's all about you, the small business person and the entrepreneur. You, after all, are the people that drive the economy of the United States of America. Yeah, that's something they don't tell you in Washington, when they're busy bailing out General Motors and the big banks and they're letting all the little small businesses in your little small town and around your corner in your neighborhood die on the vine. But most people in America work for small businesses, and when we move out of a recession, most new jobs are created by small businesses. So but today we're going to change our focus a little bit. We've had a lot of people on over the last few weeks who can help small businesses, and we've had also a few funding sources on. But today we're switching tune. We're actually going to be talking to an entrepreneur, somebody who's actually looking for money to launch his business idea. And I get really excited when I talk to entrepreneurs. There's nothing there's nothing better than listening to somebody talk about how he's going to create the latest, the greatest, the newest, or even just do something, putting an old twist or a new twist on an old idea. I just get so excited. To me, I'm just absolutely enthralled to speak to entrepreneurs, and I'm lucky to have one in the studio with me today, right here in the studio, downtown Long Beach, California. It's Dan O'Mahony, and Dan, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Not a problem at all. Now, look at Dan. You are an entrepreneur, and your goal is to open a restaurant. Mm-hmm. Now, tell me a little bit, why a restaurant? Why even do you want to, I've heard people say, restaurants are risky business. Why even do you want to be in the restaurant business?
On the one hand, it's the entirety of my resume. It's what I do. It's the background I come from. It's the business I romanticize. It's the business that sparks my imagination. On the other hand, businesses have a bad rap as an investment and as an entrepreneurial project. Typically, the bad stats you hear about restaurants and about restaurant startups come from people that went in knowingly underfunded or who went in with a lack of industry understanding. In the case of my operation, neither is true.
So that's something we always hear about as entrepreneurs who, and this is often true of people who've had a success. They have a success at something. I don't know. They're a successful car dealership, so they think, you know what, I'd like to open a restaurant. Or they're a successful, plumbing contractor, and they think, I'd like to open a restaurant. But you really, I wouldn't go into the plumbing contracting business or the car dealership business unless I knew an awful lot about the industry. And what you're saying is, hey, look at that. That's who I am. I'm an industry expert in restaurants, so therefore it only makes sense for me to open a restaurant.
Essentially, that's exactly what I'm saying.
So tell me a little bit about your experience. What kind of restaurants have you run in the past?
Well, it's funny. It's in with some people, it's in the blood. An auto shop will be passed down from grandfather to father to son to his son. Well, my family came to this country for professional wrestling, but within years went into the pub business. And O'Mahony's have been running pubs in this country since 1941. So I grew up in it. I tapped a keg, and was counting Z-drops before I was old enough to drive.
Wow. Now, you mentioned, you've got a couple of things going here. You mentioned your family and the fact that they came from Ireland. There's an interesting story behind that. I want to get into that. But before we do that, just describe for me what is the restaurant concept that you are trying to open?
Well, I'm looking to do a pub called O'Mahony's Irish Whip, which would be a full-service restaurant. And more so than many pubs, it would be as equally focused on its menu as it would on its bar program. We're looking to be not necessarily a brass rail not a high price point, option for the evening, but certainly not low end either. We're looking to be something accessible to a wide group of people, and to provide a really pleasant experience. Higher quality than usual pub food. A far larger investment made in atmosphere and presentation than is common in a lot of privately owned bars and restaurants.
Yeah, so we see a lot of bars, and it's like there's one up the street. I'm not going to mention the name, but there's one up the street. It says cocktails and food. But I mean, really, it's you can go in there and get a cocktail, or you can get a beer. But I mean, the food basically consists of hot dogs and real greasy hamburgers, and there's not much else on the menu. So what you're talking about is, even though it's going to be an Irish-themed restaurant, the fact is it's actually going to focus on providing good edible food, if you will.
It is. And one of the things, a few seconds ago, that these two answers sort of come together. I sort of did an end around on you. But you said, people succeed in something else and then they go into a restaurant. Well, people are sensory. People are sensual driven. Everybody likes to eat. Most people like to drink. I've never understood the point in getting into this industry and not doing it well and not doing it imaginatively. And Long Beach is the perfect town for something like we're trying to do. It's driven its local economy, its downtown economy is driven largely by what they call the creative class. And in this town, inventive food, rethinking of classic dishes is big.
Yeah, that's something we didn't mention. The target is downtown Long Beach, and there's a lot of people. I mean, our radio show's heard, all over the country and actually in other places around the world. But we broadcast on the air on KCAA 1050 radio out in San Bernardino, Riverside, and a lot of people who, it's a funny thing about Greater Los Angeles. You can live in Los Angeles for 20 years and still never go to some of the communities that are not more than much or 20, 30 miles away. Mm-hmm. It's amazing, these little pockets. And downtown Long Beach is really an undiscovered gem for a lot of people. It is a vibrant city right on the water. One of the few cities up and down the coast that really has a downtown core that's right on the water, which means there's a high concentration of restaurants, entertainment options, and people living within a few number of blocks of each other. So your goal is to kind of take advantage of that urban concentration that exists in downtown Long Beach.
It really is. I mean, to me, with all of that, with all of the loft living that's downtown, and with all of the things that are outlying in sort of the art district and everything else, that's a good spending group, and that's a nice group to work with as a customer base, and it's very much where we want to be.
Yeah, and of course, I like to think of if you're getting into business. There's nothing wrong with being, in some ways, a bit of a copycat. And what I mean by that is that downtown Long Beach, the area that you're looking at, already has a number of very successful restaurants that have been around a long time. And so to me, that says that the area is a good market, and as long as you're not serving the exact same food as, if there's a sushi bar, if you open up a sushi bar right next door, well, that's maybe not such a good thing. But your concept is different than the main restaurants in the area of downtown Long Beach that you're looking to locate.
I agree.
Yeah, so you've got almost like a built-in if you will, a built-in attraction. People are coming to downtown Long Beach. They're saying, let's enjoy the wide variety of entertainment that's down here, whether it be some of the nightclubs, whether it's some of the bars or some of the great restaurants. Mm-hmm. And you're going to be in there, but you're going to be different than the others. So you'll kind of be part of that downtown entertainment package that people are coming to downtown Long Beach to experience.
And hopefully a standout option.
Yeah. Well, I think your concept is absolutely great. Now tell us, we got about a minute left here, and then we're going to have to go to commercial break. So just very quickly again, tell us kind of the overview of the concept.
Well, it's actually a reboot of a family pub that existed in the 1940s under the exact same name, run by my grandfather. This iteration, however, is something that sort of recognizes current market trends in terms of menu design and in terms of bar program. Its atmosphere, however, is driven by my family's story and is driven by sort of making a presentation that would have been similar to what my grandfather experienced in Boston in the 1940s.
Okay, so this is more than just, hey, here I want to, I've been in the restaurant business for, 20-some-odd years. Mm-hmm. It's more than just, hey, it's time for me to own my own joint, if you will, but it's also, there's a passion in bringing back to life something that's been in the family, and that has a very intriguing story to it. And that's a story, we don't have enough time before we go to commercial break, but I want the listeners to hear that story because I think it's interesting and exciting. And I think also it goes to the heart of something that I think makes for a better entrepreneur, and that is if the business is more than just numbers, if there's some passionate reason why you're getting involved. And I think you've got that. So it's BizRap Radio, Mike Manahan. I'm here with Dan O'Mahony. He's opening up the O'Mahony's Irish Whip restaurant and bar in downtown Long Beach, and we'll be back right after these messages. And we're back with BizRap Radio. It's your host, Michael Manahan, and thanks so much for sticking with us. We are talking to an entrepreneur today. We're talking to Dan O'Mahony. Dan is opening up O'Mahony's Irish Whip Pub and Restaurant in downtown Long Beach, California. He's an entrepreneur. He's right now in the money-raising stage. He's collecting money from investors on a really sweet deal. We'll talk maybe a little bit about that deal in a few minutes. But Dan, I'm so intrigued by the history behind the concept. It wasn't just, hey, let's open up any old Irish pub. This thing is tied into your family history. Talk a little bit about that.
Oh, it's absolutely a mission. You're right. My name is Dan O'Mahony. My father's name was Dan O'Mahony. His father's name was Dan O'Mahony. His father's name was Dan O'Mahony.
Wow.
I'm the fourth in a successive line of oversized, red-faced Irishmen. The namesake of the pub would be Daniel Michael O'Mahony II, my grandfather. And he's very much, the best way I think that most Americans can relate to it is he's an Angela's Ashes type of an Irishman. He attended, siblings' funerals with no shoes and with a second-hand coat. Living in the rain, working more than one farm to bring enough money back to, supplement the income of his father's farm. He joined the Irish Free State Army so that he could send $15 or the equivalent of $15 a month home to his family to keep things going. Well, you have this giant hulking Irishman, tilling the soil and then going into the military just to survive at a time when professional wrestling was thriving, exploding in the United States, having its first real boom. And by professional wrestling, we mean the colorful stuff with, role-playing and over-the-top choreography and everything else, a glamorous and silly thing. Well, the champion in the United States was retiring, and the East Coast was about to lose a huge market share in the Irish. When somebody told him, you need to go check out this giant man in the Irish Army. He's setting all sorts of military records athletically in track and field, in boxing, and things like that. So a man named Jack McGrath flies over to Ireland, sees my grandfather. The second he lays eyes on him, big, handsome, broad-shouldered Irishman, says, yeah, that's my guy. I've got to get him to Boston. Well, he came here. Within 6 months, they saw fit to promote him to the world champion position. He did it for a number of years. As a man gets older and wants to get into something more sensible and more stable, he was drawn to what a lot of the Irish are, and he opened his first pub in Santa Monica.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. And it ran for decades. He passed away in 1951 in a car accident, but his brothers and his sons ran it for years, and that was my first introduction to the industry. When it closed, a few years later, I opened my first restaurant, or my first bar. I owned a cocktail lounge of myself, enjoyed it. It was a very small place. It had limited yields. And I determined that really my career path was going to be more profitable running businesses for other people. I did that for a number of years, but I've always looked back and wished I was still in ownership. And romantically, I've always known that the way to do it would be to reopen my grandfather's place.
Well, what a story. So this is, again, more than just an Irish bar restaurant. It really has strong roots in your family's history. So that's something that I'm sure will make you very, very proud once you get this open. And you were telling me that one of the things you're going to be doing is when somebody comes into the restaurant, there will be all manner of memorabilia about your grandfather on the walls and things like that.
Right. Well, as much as this is a startup and looks to be an independently owned operation, we are a borderline theme restaurant in terms of our projected presentation. We want mural-sized, imagery representing the events of my grandfather's life. Everything clear to pictures of my father and his brothers as small children, Little League shots from 1950s Americana. We want to play the Irish as well as the American to an extreme degree, and the wellspring of material we have to present a really charming picture on that front is immense.
Well, that just sounds like it's such a great idea, and theme is important in a restaurant. But let's talk. Let's move from the theme and let's talk a little bit about your partner, because you also have a partner in this restaurant, and he's got a huge resume in restaurant operations.
Right. My operational partner is a man named Alan Havstad, who I've known for about 20 years. And whereas I've always sort of worked the independent circuit, run restaurants, for private ownership groups that were successful in other industries, Alan has always been in the thick of corporate restaurant operation. And he, in particular, is a launch specialist. Mm-hmm. He's opened restaurants for the Yard House, for the Tilted Kilt, for Lazy Dog Cafe. He recently oversaw Real Mex Corporation changing El Torito to Husong and Larry's in Orange. Mm-hmm. Typically, Alan's impact on these places is to launch the highest volume ship in the company almost every time.
So he's got the kind of what I call the corporate experience, and one tends to think of corporate restaurants, whether it be something like a chain like Darden's or whether it be McDonald's, as maybe a more scientific management approach. So he brings some of that scientific, disciplined management approach, but you've got the background and you've got plenty of experience with creating atmosphere, creating a friendly environment where people will feel comfortable and welcome to come into the restaurant. So it sounds to me like a match made in heaven.
Well, operationally, I have a limited amount of corporate experience, and I'll tell you, it's been invaluable to me. On the other hand, for lack of a better word, Alan is a corporate ninja. It's in his DNA. But those structures and that sort of a limited lateral movement procedurally is crucial to keeping a place running well. It controls it's a huge component in controlling cost, in smooth daily operation. But it's not particularly passion inspiring or the exciting end of this business from a consumer standpoint. So I think pairing his know-how with my imagination and with our story is an absolutely fantastic combination.
So we got a real exciting thing here. We got people with experience in the restaurant industry, not only smaller operations, but also I shouldn't say necessarily smaller operations, but more independently owned operations, and we're pairing that with the corporate experience. We got a really good kind of concept going, the Irish pub, but based on your grandfather and his very rich history. And then we talked a little bit earlier, but I think we should go back to it. I've been, there's Irish pubs, let's face it, all over the country and, in fact, all over the world. But a lot of them, they're what you call basically an Irish pub in name only.
Absolutely. And
a lot of them really don't reflect either Irish, and a lot of them have real crappy food, if I can use that word on the air, which I think I can. But that's not your plan.
No, and the Irish and name only pubs that you're talking about, they're arguably the most common type, and they're essentially neighborhood dive bars with a piece of shamrock neon and a few gallons of green paint, and really nothing more.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. If your name is Liam Clancy, and something comes available in your neighborhood, you're going to open Clancy's. I understand.
Sure.
And that's not meant to be specific. It could be O'Neill. It could be anything.
Sure.
It could be
right.
McGillicuddy. On the other hand, if you've got two guys with a combined 40 years experience in the restaurants and pubs, you're not going to open an Irish in name only. You're going to open a powerful, exciting operation and get things done, and I look forward to that. There are, even within that, if you look at Irish pubs in general, there are still the formats expand exponentially. You have things like the Tilted Kilt, which arguably is an Irish pub, which is an extremely branded corporate entity with a very obvious hook in terms of sex appeal or however you want to refer to it. Then you have things like the Dubliner in Long Beach, O'Malley's in Seal Beach, several around the state of California, sort of polished wood, beautifully executed 19th century attempts at recreating traditional Ireland. We're neither. And excited about that fact.
Well, that's good. So you're going to be distinct. You're going to have a definite brand. It's a brand rooted in history. It's going to have the Irish theme to it. And then you were mentioning food as well. You were talking about being what I would call a little more, I'm not sure the right word, but is a little more modern in some of the food offerings.
I would say we're going to try and be, in certain offerings, we're going to try and be flat out foodie.
Uh-huh.
I think is the word that people love to use now. You know? We're in the age of the internet and people photographing their meals,
right?
And
yes.
we want to be picture worthy,
right? So you want the food to look good and to taste good.
Yeah, we're not thinking sesame seed. We're thinking cracked pretzel bun. You know,
gotcha.
And local sourcing, fresh ingredients. You know, is as much a farm to table operation as is realistic.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's you know, I think we went through a kind of a time there when smaller restaurants, for maybe it was for profit, maybe it was just for ease of operation. Basically, what they did is they contracted with one of these large food houses, and basically everything almost came prepackaged, and it was just kind of you slop the stuff out of the refrigerator, and basically serve it. But I think we're now seeing a lot of that going by the wayside. Smaller restaurants are taking the time to create things in-house. They're ordering the raw vegetables. They're ordering, they're making their own salsa, as an example, rather than ordering some salsa that's been manufactured in some factory 200 miles away. And I think that's a really a good trend, and I think it presents a huge opportunity. But, Dan, we are coming up on one of those commercial breaks. We're going to have to go to commercial break. It's Dan O'Mahony, and we're talking about O'Mahony's Irish Whip Pub and Restaurant, soon to be in downtown Long Beach. Dan's out looking for investors. He's got a pretty good deal for somebody, actually a very good deal, for somebody who might be interested in potentially making a good return on their investment. We'll talk about more of that in the next segment. It is Mike Manahan, Biz Rap Radio, and we will be back right after these messages. And welcome back to Biz Rap Radio. It's your host, Michael Manahan, and of course, Biz Rap Radio, the show all about small business and entrepreneurs. If you're just joining us, we have in studio with us today Mr. Dan O'Mahony. Dan, again, thanks for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
Oh, and I appreciate the invitation.
Not at all. I'd love to hear from entrepreneurs. I was mentioning at the top of the show how I get excited about entrepreneurs, the idea of opening up a business, starting a business. And we've been talking about your restaurant concept. You've based it upon the history of your grandfather, who was a famous wrestler back in the 1930s, and who, after his retirement from wrestling, he opened his own bar called the Irish Whip, which closed down some time ago. And you and your partner, you've got 40-some-odd plus years combined experience in the restaurant industry. You found a location. You're out there raising capital because you want to get this restaurant opened, and it's going to be in beautiful downtown Long Beach, which is a great entertainment district. It's one of the major entertainment districts of what I call the greater Los Angeles area. Draws on not only the 400,000 residents of Long Beach, of course, but draws people from L.A. County and Orange County as an entertainment center. Of course, it's right on the ocean with the Queen Mary. You've got the events like the Grand Prix come here to Long Beach every year, which brings in 200,000 people for that event. So it seems like you've got the location, you've got the concept, you've got the background, which is so important. You know how to run restaurants and bars. But now what we need to get some capital in here. And you've come up with, I think, something that's really interesting in terms of structure. Your intent is to borrow the money. You're going to pay a good, healthy rate of return in terms of interest.
Definitely.
Which is good. And I think you were mentioning something about 12% interest on the note.
Correct.
But in addition to that, even once the note is paid off, which you think you can do in maybe 2 to 3 years, you plan on giving the note holders an interest in the revenue stream from the restaurant. So they'll basically be getting something every month, even if the restaurant doesn't make money. And, of course, you're anticipating it's going to do extremely well, and I think it will as well. Mm-hmm. But that's a real sweet deal.
Yeah, we're offering a chunk from revenue as opposed to profit is a very sweet deal.
Yeah, it's nice because the thing that as somebody who's raised a lot of dollars over the years and looked at a lot of deals, if you're a minority, a lot of small companies try and sell stock. They say, well, let's sell 20% of our company or 30% of our company. Mm-hmm. But if you invest in a deal like that, you're not in control And the owners, or the majority shareholders, can easily manipulate profitability. It's not difficult to manipulate profitability. And if you're expecting, hey, okay, I'm invested in the company, I'm expecting my share of the profits. If there's no profits, well, guess what? You're not going to get anything.
Right.
And I've seen, I've seen so many people over the years put money into deals like that, and at the end of the day, they feel like they were kind of screwed because the people who own the majority of the stock do things that affect profitability that you've got no control over. Whether it's giving, I remember one deal I was involved with. One of the owners went out and put his wife on the payroll, paying her $100,000 a year. Well, that decreased the profit. The people who were the minority shareholders were affected by that, but technically there was nothing they could do about it. She apparently did some work for the company, and it just was bad blood. But with this idea, somebody puts up the money. They get an interest rate on the money they've put up. They get paid back as the restaurant generates profits. And then they get an interest in the revenue. So they're going to get a check every month and literally, as long as they want to, pretty much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it safeguards the investor against what I think is probably the common fear that you load people up with operational capital, and then the next time you see them, the restaurant is crumbling, but they've got a new car.
Right. Exactly. Well, that's the other thing is because it's debt, the money's got to be paid back. So,
correct.
And I've seen that thing as well. This company says, hey, we're going to raise $1 million. And really, in the back of their mind, they only need $700,000, so they get an extra $300,000 sitting in the bank, and that's exactly what they do. The CEO says, "Well, we got $300,000 sitting in the bank. Why don't we just go get ourselves new cars, or why don't we take that business development trip to Hawaii or Cancun or something like that?"
The restaurant business is full of adventurers and people that are trying to figure out their path for the second half of their life. That's not the case in this group. You have two veteran industry veterans with no plans on leaving the industry anytime soon, and not an ounce of recklessness in their blood, which is actually rare in restaurant startups.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing you do find in restaurants, and I also know guys who have done this. I know a gentleman who opened up a wine bar. And he really didn't open up the wine bar because he wanted to be in the wine bar business. He was envisioning sitting around and drinking with his friends, and there'd be hot babes coming in on a Friday evening, and they could hustle the hot babes and party central. But that is no way to run a business.
That's something that might appeal to an investor, but should not appeal to an operator.
Absolutely.
There's this whole thing that you've in restaurant operation, a house is going to run loose if management is not the best example of how to behave. So, somebody buys into a restaurant and it goes well, they can go and hang their coat. They can go sit down in there with some pride and say, I'm a part of this, and be treated appropriately. Be shown, the best the house has to offer. That's not true for the operators. They're on the clock all the time, and you need to operate with some pride and some decorum.
Sure.
This is a group looking for capital who has that knowledge ingrained in them to the bone.
Well, it sounds like a really good deal to me. So, Dan, let's say somebody's listening right now. Let's say they've got a little bit of extra cash. I don't know. Maybe they're an entrepreneur and they've made money themselves. Maybe they own a restaurant, or maybe they own, a trucking company, a cement company. Who knows what they might own? But they're an entrepreneur. They've made some money, and they got a chunk of cash sitting there at the bank making, 0.75% or 0.5% interest. And they're saying, how can I leverage this and make more money? What's the minimum investment that somebody could put in, or the minimum loan they could make?
Well, $30,000.
So $30,000. So somebody could get in for $30,000, get in 12% interest, and get a kicker on the revenue stream, revenue participation in the restaurant. And of course, anybody who did that would be a very welcome guest as well to come through the front doors once you're up and operating.
A treasured guest.
Yeah, treasured guest. Okay, let's say somebody's listening and they're interested. How could they get a hold of you?
Well, I can be reached through email, either Dan at omahonesirishwhip.com. I would rather not disclose my phone number on the
that's
air.
Fine. That's fine.
We do have a web presence on Facebook.
Okay.
The website, is currently under development. I would like it to be very location, very atmosphere specific.
Okay. So it's Dan at omahonesirishwhip.com. And
And there is no E in O'Mahony's.
Right,
Most Americans think there is.
And you know, if you're really troubled by that and that's too much to write down, you can always just go to bizrapradio.com, click on the suggestion box, and say, "Hey, put me in touch with Dan," and we'll immediately connect you with Dan. This really sounds like a wonderful deal. Now, Dan, let's say that you're able to raise the capital you need here. Let's say by let's say you could raise it by the end of April. Mm-hmm. How long do you think it would take to actually get the restaurant up and open?
We'd be shooting to be open post soft opening by July 4th.
Okay, so you think maybe you could do it in a few months' time?
I know so. I've been involved in multiple openings.
Okay, because both you and your partner have opened a number of restaurants. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the facility, by the way, that you're looking at, you showed it to me the other day. A very nice facility. You don't have to completely build it out. You can make changes to it, but it's not like you're going into a completely bare space.
We love the bones, which saves us a ton of time.
Yeah, and
most changes would be almost purely cosmetic.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, this is really exciting. I'm so looking forward to that grand opening. And I guess, although we'll have to wait till 2016 to be celebrating the most famous of Irish days, St. Patrick's Day there.
True.
But that's okay. That's a great anticipation. So think about it, folks. If you have a little bit of money, if you're looking for something to do with that money, you're looking for a good return on your money, here's an opportunity to help out a local entrepreneur. Now think about this. You're helping create jobs right here in America, because once this place get opened, how many staff will it take to run a restaurant like this, Dan?
A restaurant this side, front of house, back of house, roughly 50 people, possibly less.
So you'll have as many as 50 people on the payroll, not to mention money you'll be spending on marketing, on advertising. You may have entertainers in on the weekend, something like that. So you're actually providing jobs right here in the United States of America. I'm just so excited. I can hardly wait to chow down into my first bite of that. What is it? Shepherd's pie? Is that what they serve? It
is.
Yeah, okay. Well... Anyways, it is Mike Manahan, Biz Rap Radio. I'm here with Dan O'Mahony. We've been talking about O'Mahony's Irish Whip Pub and Restaurant, downtown Long Beach, coming soon with your help, hopefully. If you're interested, let us know. Go to bizrapradio.com, click on the suggestion box. With that, we're going to have to go to another commercial break. Dan, thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, Mike, thank you for having me.
Not a problem. Again, Mike Manahan, your host, Biz Rap Radio, and we will be back right after these messages. And welcome back to Biz Rap Radio. It's your host, Michael Manahan. And we were on with Dan O'Mahony, who is trying to open O'Mahony's Irish Whip Pub in Long Beach, California. And good luck to Dan. It sounded like a really interesting project. If you've just joined us, this is the show all about small business and entrepreneurs. We're here celebrating entrepreneurs and trying to help small businesses to make more money, make more profits, put it in your pocket, take care of yourself and your family, take care of your friends, and if you make enough money, of course, everybody's got an obligation to share that around and do good for the community. That's what it's all about. Now, a number of you know that outside of doing the radio show, I am a business consultant, and I do advise businesses and help them with a number of things. I work on financial strategy, I work on business plans, financial projections, help early-stage companies raise capital, and help companies that are in trouble with strategies and ideas that they can use to hopefully get out of trouble. And a lot of people come to me and say, Mike, I'm trying to start a business, or I've got a business and it's maybe going now, but I want to expand it, and I want to get some more capital for the business. And one of the fundamentals that you have to have if you are going to raise money is the business plan. Now, I know I've heard people say, well, what about that guy in New York who was sitting down in the bar, one of those expensive martini bars back in New York, and he scratched his concept on the back of a cocktail napkin and got $50 million from some investment banker. It's not that stuff like that doesn't happen, but for most people who are going to go out there and going to get capital for their business, they are going to have to put together a business plan. And then there's the concept of the lean business plan, which is maybe not quite so lengthy and so detailed as what a business plan might have been, years ago. But even a lean business plan is a document that clearly articulates enough information about the company so that somebody reading it can really understand what the company is doing, who the customers are, what the products or services are, how the company makes money, how the company is going to grow, what the market for the company's products or services is, and finally, how much money can the company make and how do the investors get paid back. And you would think that is just so obvious that you wouldn't have to repeat it, but I repeat it because once again this week I had an entrepreneur approach me, and he wants to raise some money for his business. I'm not going to tell you who the entrepreneur is. I don't want to embarrass him in case anybody out there knows him. But I said, yeah, sure. I'll see what let's talk about it. So I asked the entrepreneur to send me his business plan. And he sent a business plan that was about 15 pages long. And so you think, 15 pages, okay, that would qualify as a lean business plan. I mean, it's probably got enough information in 15 pages to kind of tell what the business is doing, what it's all about. So I open up the business plan and I start reading, and I literally almost fell off my chair. It was unbelievably sparse. Each page had, first of all, it was full of pictures. So he'd added pictures. It's something to do with the medical industry. So there's pictures of doctors, there's pictures of nurses, there's pictures of hospitals. Now, this is not... the doctors and the nurses have nothing to do with this actual business. These are just stock photographs that the guy probably captured off of the internet somewhere. Nothing whatsoever to do with the business. So, number one, it's full of useless pictures that don't really mean anything. Number two, it is full of large graphs. So, as an example, he has represented things like his revenue stream in multiple pages of graphs, each graph taking up half a page. And so when it comes down to it, this entire business plan probably does not have more than, and I'm serious about this, it probably does not have more than maybe a page and a half worth of actual written text in it. Then when I start to read the actual written text, it is all double-spaced. So now you take a page and a half of double-spaced written text. That's not very much in the way of words. And I'll give you an example. He talks about his products and services. So there's a title heading here on one of the pages. It's page 4. It says products and services. And there is 2 lines, yes, 2 typewritten lines that talks all about their products and services. I look at target market. There is 2 1/4 lines that talk about their target market. Well, you've got to have something meatier than that. And I called the guy and I said, this business plan, I'm going to be honest with you, it's really a pile of crap. I mean, nobody's ever going to fund you on this business plan. I said, did you write it? He said, he says, I'm not a good writer. He said, so I hired somebody off the internet to write it for me. Okay, fair enough. There's people on the internet who can write business plans. You can hire somebody to help you write business plans. There are people who are excellent writers. I said, well, how much did you pay him? He said, I paid him $150. Now, my friends, if you cannot write your own business plan, rest assured you cannot get a quality business plan written for $150. It is just not going to work. People who write well get paid for their services. And what this person obviously did was plugged some information literally into some prepackaged program or something. But one of the worst business plans I've ever seen. This guy's never going to raise any money. By the way, if you are struggling with your business plan and you want help with it, yes, I do that kind of thing. I'd be happy to help you with yours. I do charge a fee. I don't do it for free, but you don't have to come to me. There's lots of people who can help you write your business plan. But in addition to writing the business plan, you have to have a plan. What does that mean? That means, look, you may have the business plan up in your head, and a good writer will be able to take your business plan, if you sit down with that person and you explain it to that person orally, and then that person will be able to put it down on paper. But you're going to have to go through a number of versions. You're going to have to do some research on the market. You're going to have to do some research on the competition. You're going to have to do some research on customers. Who are the likely customers? There are a lot of questions that need to be answered in order to write a competent and complete business plan. If you don't have one, the likelihood of you raising the capital you need are slim and none. It really, that's what it comes down to. And it's not that somebody who's going to fund you will necessarily read your business plan word for word, although many funding sources will read your business plan word for word. But it is a critical, important document that you need to have if you're going to raise capital. And you've got to take the time, and you've got to, and if you, to do it and do it properly. And again, if you cannot do it properly by yourself, that's fine. Then you need to recruit somebody. Now, I had another conversation with this gentleman, and I said, well, why don't you really hire somebody to do a better job? Well, he says, I'm a startup. I just don't have the money. Well, remember, there's more than one ways to skin a cat in the world of finance. If you don't have the money, maybe have somebody write your business plan and give them a piece of the company. Say, look, I'll tell you what, write me a really good business plan. Help me work on this so it's a business plan that's going to be compelling and that it's going to get money from investors. And if you do that, I'll give you 5% of my company. So that's one choice. Another choice is, pay a little bit to have the business plan written with the balance to be paid when you get funded. That's another strategy. I'll tell you what, I'll pay you $5,000. Help me really get a decent business plan together. And I'll give you $1,000 now, and when we get our funding, I'll give you the balance, the $4,000. I mean, there's many different options that you can do, or perhaps you have some expertise that you could help. Maybe you're good at building web pages. Maybe you could trade out what you're good at for somebody else who can help you get the put together that all-important business plan. But believe me, if all you're going to do is pay some guy $150 off the internet, you're going to end up with a piece of crap. Business plans, all important. BizRap Radio, we believe we can fix the United States of America through a fundamental concept that individuals pursuing their own economic interests in free markets will create more prosperity for more people than can ever be achieved through government regulation and a planned economy. It's Mike Manahan, your host, BizRap Radio. We'll be back again next week.